Later Stoic influences on the field of economics, Panaetus of Rhodes. Panaetus of Rhodes, an aristocrat by birth and friend of Scipio Aemilianus, seems to have a preference for agriculture. His opinion is that there is no kind of gainful employment that is better, more fruitful, more pleasant, and more worthy of a free man than agriculture. His homage to agriculture actually concerns only the landowner and the hard-working farmer, just like Xenophon's. Stobaeus belongs to the tradition of texts written by the Neo-Pythagoreans. These include Bryson or Economicus, Callicratidas, Peri-Oiko-Eudemonius, or On Household Happiness. The surviving fragment of Bryson's Economicus consists of two parts. He dealt with specific issues of which we can give an overview. The nature of economics and the right methods of acquiring goods, the definition of wealth and economic, welfare, agriculture and trade, and relationships with slaves, types of slaves, Vodolva, the legitimacy of Dolva. The Neo-Pythagoreans, or Bryson, in the first part he gives a catalogue of vocations similar to that of Xenophon or Economicus and Oeconomica. In the Arabic text of Bryson's treatise we find a strange theory about the fixity of professions. He maintains that since there is a need in a polis for all crafts, it is praiseworthy to remain within one's own class without desire to improve oneself by taking a superior craft. In the second part of Stobaeus' fragments, Bryson adds an anthropological study of different kinds of slavery, isolating the physical characteristics in relation to the different duties assigned to them in the oikos. Bryson distinguishes three kinds. Firstly, according to origins, by law, by lack of control, by nature, and secondly, according to the duties, domestic, personal, outdoor workers. A particular interesting text is the first chapter of Bryson's Oeconomicus, which is devoted to the subject of money. This chapter consists of a practical section dedicated to the problems of acquiring money in the correct manner of expenditure, the Neo-Pythagoreans or Callicratidas. Callicratidas' study entitled Peri-Oiko-Eudemonius on household happiness. The term oikodespotes is used in the essay for the first time. He considers that the family community consists both of people and of property. Callicratidas compares different kinds of family relationships to different institutions of the polis in a very similar way to Aristotle. Then he analyzes the three relationships in the oikos, the despotic, the superintendentic, and the politician. Callicratidas compares the organization of the polis and the oikos with the organization of the world, or cosmos. Wealth and labor in the Cynic sect. The essence of the Cynic state is the virtue of the self-sufficient individual, a state certainly attainable in practice. This state involves rejection of the polis and all its institutions. The characteristic feature of the Cynic theory lies in the fact that they express a radical asceticism. Wealth and labor in the Cynic sect, or Antisthenes. Their founder, Antisthenes, one of the Socrates' pupils, boasts of his wealth house. The founder, Antisthenes, one of the Socrates' pupils, boasts of his wealth because he says wealth and poverty are not in men's houses, but in their souls. Wealth without virtue was not only worthless, but a fruitful source of evil. He declared polis life and civilization to be the source of all injustice, luxury, and corruption. Wealth and labor in the Cynic sect, or Diogenes of Sinope. According to Diogenes of Sinope, wealth without virtue is worse than poverty, and virtue cannot dwell either in a wealthier state or in a wealthy house. In his 15th letter, he refers to love of money as the cause of all evil. Diogenes said that people gathered in the towns in order to be free from injustice. but in the cities they did the world things as if they had gathered with that aim. Wealth and labor in the Islamic sect. Crates of tapes, a wealthy landowner gives away his possessions, exclaiming that in this way he is freeing himself. Tales of Megara, a teacher and moralist, maintains that the possession of money is not free from want. The poor, not the wealthy, has pleasure because he can attain to a contemplative life, while the wealthy is effeminate because he does not need to work. Wealth and labor in the Islamic sect, or Sarisidas of Megalopolis. Sarisidas of Megalopolis, a military commander, poet and cynic philosopher who combined the roles of statesman. Sarisidas, dissatisfied with the existing order, exhorted his wealthy friends to meet the threat of social revolution by healing the sick and giving to the poor. So he emphasized the fact that for sharing with others is a divinity, and nemesis is still present on earth. Nemesis is a word which in its original sense means a proper distribution of shares. The characteristic feature of the cynic behavior is that the cynic did have been respected by their contemporaries. They influenced the early Christian fathers. In the second half of the 4th century, the Eastern Christian fathers developed some interesting economic ideas and suggestions, focusing on solving the problem of the extreme maldistribution of wealth. Fathers considered the only vital concern of man to be life after death. Fathers commanded the faithful to obey the civil authorities except where such obedience would involve a clear breach of divine law. Where such conflict of obligations did arise, the fathers taught passive resistance, tree activities or judicial functions. Fathers maintained that in the beginnings of the human society, all things were held and used in common. Christian fathers of the East deal with the following issues: wealth and poverty, Theodoret, work, usury, and slavery. Wealth and poverty. Fathers never attached any religious value to private property unless if there is no other substitute. They said that under private property, luxurious living and extreme poverty could exist. They advised all Christians to avoid seeing riches. Their main interest was to redistribute the general wealth and income of a community through almsgiving. They give no attention to alleviating poverty by measures or behavior. Theodoret, or the transgressive legislation of economic inequality. Theodoretus of Kairos justified economic inequality and linked it to specialization. He added that economic inequality yielded a desirable life to both the rich and the poor. Both supply each other. Work. Fathers believed that one should be a hard worker. Basil considered the main purpose of labor was charity. According to Basil, work is a social duty with a socio-ethical meaning. Basil and Saint Chrysostom shows their preference in farming and agriculture. Usually, in the 1st century AD, usually was not an issue at all in the Christian writings. The issue first appeared in Clemens' disapproval of usually, believing that the prohibition of interest law is still binding on Christians. Basil urged the rich to lend his money. Basil names usury as Stokos, and he severely criticized it, citing it was born to destroy the houses of the debtors. Slavery. Fathers mainly accepted slavery. However, some philosophers, with the notable exceptions of Plato and Aristotle, condemned slavery. Fathers considered slavery as punishment for sin and to some extent a remedy for it. The Byzantine thought and literature has not shown a tradition of economic thought. Similar to that of the West, the Byzantine thought and literature has not shown a tradition of economic thought, similar to that of the West. Nevertheless, certain suggestions within the theoretical scope do appear. Byzantines did not resign from introspecting the function of economic phenomena as manifestations of such reality. Their economic studies do not reach a conclusion by means of treatises or other independent work. In Byzantine Empire, three elements had a strong impact: Christianity, the Roman legal tradition, and the ancient Greek philosophical tradition. The concept of social justice was deeply embedded in Byzantine society, where justice carried both the general meaning of equality and the specific meaning of the protection of the weaker members of society. Through the instruments of legal justice and legislation, the state intervened in the economic process, for example, in the matter of the formation of prices. The state set limits on the interest rates as well as on profit rates. Mikhail of Ephesus saw the economic process as a complex and dynamic problem. He sketched the elements of a concept of supply and demand without developing it fully. In the book named Agriculture, it's viewed that the state is organized in three different and discrete levels: the army, the church, and agriculture. Auxentius saved the disparate market by calling on people to buy goods for the price demanded. This was for the aim of solving the problems of piled stock. Auxentius' theory or philosophema became the basis of a sound economy. Auxentius' theory or philosophema became the basis of a sound economy. The emperor organized a committee for the control of supply and prices to recover the economy. This expresses the view that the labor as an objective cost determines the price of the product. Oikonomia was addressed in the third part of the Strategian or Officer's Manual. The author of the manual suggests that one should avoid changing one's occupation and maintaining rather a specific occupation, not because there are any legal restrictions, but because he recognizes that the continuous change of an occupation is in economic terms neither efficient nor profitable. Treatises that try to tackle the financial difficulties propose that the emperor should take measures for a better distribution of the income. Magister recognizes the value of arts and crafts and the obligation incumbent upon all ordinary citizens to follow in occupation and employ their faculties in production. He also recognizes the duty of the citizen to practice the arts of war as well as the arts of peace, and to qualify himself by training in some form of military service to play his part in the military which the state needs for its defense. The period of the 2 or 3 last centuries of the Byzantine Empire, which is directly connected with a politically, economically, and socially shrunk and weakened state on the one hand, and of a significant cultural production on the other hand. This period, known as post-Byzantine period or the last Byzantine Renaissance, it was characterized by several economic and political views. Thomas Magister, Georgius Gemistos Platon, and Bezario did occupy with the financial problems and recognized the heavy taxes as the evil of all problems. Magister suggested that extra taxation without a specific reason should not be imposed because it revolted citizens and perpetuated social injustice. The system of tax was rearranged, and as a consequence of a good and right tax policy, there came the correct handling of public money. Platon considered monarchy to be the best suited system of government. He claimed that monarchy is the safest and most beneficial. For Platon, the monarch would be surrounded by a council. The number of advisors must certainly be restricted, yet it must be sufficient, the members being of moderate financial status and having an excellent education. However, he was well aware of the various human weaknesses of the statesman and of his several advisors. Thus he stressed that the selection of several servants and advisors must be based mainly upon their special knowledge and their non-self-interested behavior. He suggested that all civil servants should be chosen by using objective criteria, namely that of meritocracy, and claimed that their corruption should be severely punished. The successful application of the division of labor, the tripartite division of the population, the abolishment of the many taxes, and the establishment of an unique tax and the control of the imports and exports constitute the main content of Aristotle's proposals. Plato argued that the main function of government is the protection of individuals' property rights and people's freedom. Thus, it seemed that they regarded sovereignty as a kind of social contract. Cardinal Bessarion, Gemistos' disciples, proposed a specific reform program: the discretion of the population in taxpayers and not soldiers, and in non-taxpayers and soldiers. The reorganization of army, the control of imports and exports through selective duties, the connection of production and technological education, and the recognition of the economic significance of education. In conclusion, the contribution of the Byzantine scholars were occupied with applied economic facts. They did not seem to have any theoretical approximation in issues like value, price, wage. We have, however, to include their contribution in the evolution of the medieval economic thought. Arabic Islamic economic thought. Arabic treatises emphasized the importance of never taxing the peasantry or merchants so heavily as to discourage or adversely affect commerce or production. Abu Yusuf in his book Kitab al-Kharaj analyzes the topics: type of taxation, fixed amount, tax collection and administration, and public financing of rural development projects. Another literature elaborated on the relation of price to supply and demand for the identification of the conditions under which the market requires intervention and when it is self-regulating. Being the supreme goal, the state must secure a balance between private interests and public pursuits. He argues the state must work towards such goals as the eradication of poverty, amelioration of gross income and wealth inequalities, regulation of markets to minimize the adverse effects of market failures, and planning to provide the necessary socio-economic infrastructure, just and enforcement of the laws. According to Ibn Taymiyyah, prices reflect market conditions, and prices increases which result from a scarcity of goods or an excess in demand that are caused by God. He says it's unfair to penalize the merchant by setting arbitrary prices. Monopolization plays a role against welfare of the community. Another literature deals with the economics of the household, the Greek oikos. The Muslim philosophers introduced as the Greek concept of economia the term falasifa, and oikonomia tadbir would be used to designate management of the household, tadbir al-manazil, administration. Farabi emphasized the similarities between personal rule in the household and that of the ruler of the state. Following Aristotle, Farabi analyzes in his aphorism of the statesman the four relations in the family household: husband and wife, master and slave, parents and children, and owner and property. He who is asked to rule, arrange and manage all of the parts is the master of the household. He is called ruler, and his duties are like those of the ruler of the city. After Farabi, the Arabic Islamic authors continue to follow the tradition of Plato's and Aristotle's works. This tradition of the Arabic Islamic economic thought found its peak in Ibn Khaldun's work. Ibn Khaldun's economic thought. In his book Al-Muqaddimah, he reveals a theory of production, a theory of value, a theory of distribution, and a theory of cycles. According to Ibn Khaldun, two different kinds of social milieu have characterized human development: the Umran al-Badawi, or nomad civilization, and the Umran al-Hadari, urban civilization. He deals with the art of managing the production and distribution of wealth. He emphasizes on production as the source of wealth. He elaborated on the division of labor. The profit human beings make is the value realized from their labor. He views that precious metals like gold and silver are metals but not a source of wealth. For Ibn Khaldun, spending side of public finance is extremely important. It motivated production. Government demands in the market, this promotes production. Taxes are the source of the government spending. Government shouldn't overtax enterprises as this would lead to an increase in the cost of enterprises, obliging the government to nationalize them.